what's going on, everybody? It is Brandon, and welcome back to Murata Media. Well, here we are. Another year has come and gone. I truly cannot believe that this year is already over. And honestly, I think 2023 was a pretty stellar year for film. There were truly so many terrific and memorable films that came out this year. But as great of a year for film as this was, there were also quite a few stinkers along the way. And that's what I'm going to be going over in this video, what I believe to be the worst movies of 2023. And this year, I'm going to go over 20 of them. I believe I went over 20 last year. And in case you haven't seen my end of the year list before, what I'm going to do is run through 20 through 11 as quickly as possible. I might have a few things here and there to say about the movies that I'm listing, but for the most part, I'm going to wait to give my full in-depth thoughts when I get to the top 10. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the list. These movies sucked. These are the 20 worst movies of 2023. Starting us off at the bottom at number 20, I have what is easily the most annoying and obnoxious movie of the year, Totally Killer. At 19, I have Murder Mystery 2. At 18, I have the beginning of Phase 5 of the MCU, and I was so much looking forward to where this movie was going to take the franchise, and that was Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I was truly looking forward to seeing what they were going to do with Kang the Conqueror, but now we're never gonna find out. At 17, I have a movie that had such a phenomenal idea, but such boring execution, and that was The Last Voyage of the Demeter. At 16, I have the most pretentious film of the year, Leave the World Behind. At 15, I have the most generic horror movie I've ever seen, The Boogeyman. If you have seen any horror movie ever, you have seen The Boogeyman. At 14, I have You People, a painfully unfunny comedy that was so self-important and had absolutely no chemistry between its two leads. Such little chemistry that they actually had to CGI a kiss between the two of them. No, I'm not kidding. At 13, I have the Christmas slasher It's a Wonderful Knife. At number 12 is a movie that the mob is gonna come after me for having on this list, and that is The Marvels. And at number 11, just barely missing my top 10, is another lifeless, soulless, pointless Disney live-action remake, Peter Pan and Wendy. Well, those were what I thought were the worst movies of the year, 20 through 11. Let's get into the top 10. And starting us off at number 10 is a movie that I'm actually very pleased made my top 10, and that was The Flash. If you saw my review of this movie, then you will know that I have such a distaste for this film. But not only is The Flash just a terrible movie on its own, the reason that I think I hated this movie even more than I thought I would is because of the hype that was surrounding it. Leading up to the release of The Flash, I had heard so many people saying that not only is this the best DCEU movie, but the best DC movie ever made. And some people even going as far as to say that this is the best superhero movie ever made, and I need to know what the hell those people are smoking. The Flash truly has one of the worst scripts that I've ever seen in any superhero movie. The dialogue is awful. Ezra Miller is not a good actor and just a terrible person to add insult to injury. Batman and Supergirl are the best parts of this entire thing, but they are both completely wasted. Literally anybody could have played Batman besides Michael Keaton and it would have been exactly the same. And not to mention, The Flash contains the worst CGI that I have ever seen in any movie. The CGI just is not finished, and the director actually had the audacity to come out and say that it's supposed to look bad on purpose. Bullshit. And to end things off, someone actually told me that I need to reevaluate my life because I didn't like this movie. Imagine loving such a terrible movie that much that you tell a stranger how they should live. Alright, moving on to number 9, I have the latest entry in the most overrated and long-winded franchise ever created, Fast X. I had this same suspicion after I watched F9 a few years ago, but at this point, the Fast and Furious franchise has truly run its course. I feel like these movies have become so over the top and so overly insane that they've become stale. I truly don't think that there is anywhere more insane that this franchise can go from here. And those could be my famous last words, but really, I can't think of anything they could possibly do that would make these movies good or even entertaining again. And the fact that Fast X is supposed to be the first part of a trilogy? What the hell are we doing here? This movie is riddled with plot holes, horrendous editing, and just a multitude of characters that honestly I've grown to just dislike over the years. And the rationale people are giving by trying to give this movie a pass and say that it's good is that Jason Momoa is having fun in the movie. Yeah, I agree, he was clearly having the time of his life, but that doesn't change the fact that this movie is a steaming pile of shit. At number 8, I have the latest horror movie to be destroyed by David Gordon Green, The Exorcist Believer. Like I said, David Gordon Green once again ruins a classic horror film with a god-awful legacy sequel. After the debacle that was Halloween Ends last year, I knew The Exorcist Believer was gonna be bad, but at the very least I was hoping it would just be mid. But nope, it was really bad, and that's why you're seeing it on this list. David Gordon Green truly has no eye or prowess for the horror genre, and he just proves that even more so with this movie. It follows the exact same story beats as the original Exorcist film, except this time it has horrible direction, empty characters, and some of the most wooden acting of the year. Oh, and on top of that, what they did to Ellen Burstyn in this movie is just borderline criminal, and honestly, I think it's unforgivable. Moving on to number 7 is a rom-com action flick that went directly to Apple TV+. Ghosted. What happens when you take two of the most beautiful people working in Hollywood today and slap them into an action rom-com that went directly to streaming? Well, you get this hunk of shit. Chris Evans and Ana de Armas have absolutely no chemistry with one another. In fact, they have such little chemistry that people actually theorize that they were never on set together. And if you ask me, that theory is not that far-fetched. And the look of this movie is just so artificial. It has the presentation of a movie that looks like it was just pumped out in a factory, and the filmmakers are trying to pass it off as legitimate Hollywood entertainment. But I tell you, man, the love of my life, Ana de Armas, she's had such a terrible year this last year. Not only being in this terrible movie, but last year she was in 3 other terrible movies: Blonde, Deep Water, and The Gray Man. She deserves better than this. Can someone please put my wife in a good movie? Please, I'm begging you. At number 6, I have a remake to a cult classic that absolutely nobody asked for: White Men Can't Jump. The original White Men Can't Jump is a beloved film, and it had 2 of the best actors of the 90s as well as today working alongside each other. But now they remake it 31 years later, and this time it's being helmed by a terrible rapper who can't act, and whoever the hell the other guy is. The direction in this movie is so unbelievably terrible. There are several moments where you could see actors visibly waiting for their cues. Coupled with dialogue that tries so hard to be current and topical, it comes off like a very basic understanding of a political argument on Twitter. And not to mention that this movie was not funny at all. I'm not exaggerating. I recall laughing only one time throughout this entire thing. But yeah, this was just a completely unnecessary remake that nobody wanted, and I'm willing to bet that if people haven't forgotten this movie by now, they won't remember it a good month or 2 from now. Mark my words. Moving into the 5 spot, we have yet another remake of a 90s cult classic: House Party. Speaking of unnecessary remakes that nobody is going to remember a few months from now if they haven't already. Fun fact, this movie was also directed by Cal Maddock, the same man who directed the previous film on this list, White Men Can't Jump. So big congrats to Cal Maddock on making 2 of the worst movies of 2023. This guy really has a talent. But from what I remember, just like White Men Can't Jump, this movie tries so damn hard to be funny, and it fails miserably. It also contains an overabundance of unnecessary celebrity cameos, which it thinks is the saving grace of the entire thing. In the first 2 acts, this movie just tries to be this buddy comedy sort of movie, but by the 3rd act, it becomes something entirely different and completely out of left field. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, this movie is garbage, but I can't really expect anything less from the filmmaking genius that was also responsible for bringing us Space Jam: A New Legacy. At number 4, I have a movie that I just recently reviewed on this channel a few days ago: Silent Night. I went into Silent Night with absolutely no expectations. I thought this movie looked pretty fun, but I wasn't, hyped for it or anything. But little did I know walking out of it that it would be this high on my worst movies of the year list. The entire gimmick of this movie is that nobody is talking, hence the title. And let me tell you, that gimmick grows old so quickly. Because when you're watching a movie where absolutely nobody is talking for no reason, it becomes pretty awkward and at times nonsensical. And not to mention the terrible editing and uneven tone. This movie takes itself so unbelievably seriously, but there are so many moments that come off as comical. And to tell you the truth, I would probably be willing to forgive all of that if the action was worth it. But it isn't. I always love looking for new movies to add to my Christmas rotation every holiday season, but Silent Night will not be one of them. I will never watch this movie again. At number 3, I have a movie that a lot of people tried to unironically say was a masterpiece. Meg 2, The Trench. Now, I was not a fan of the first Meg movie. I think that movie was on my worst movies of 2018 list. But that movie is the godfather compared to this. Like I said, so many people were trying to unironically say that this movie was actually so great and a lot of fun. But plot twist, it wasn't great at all, and it wasn't fun at all. It was rather boring. The only fun that happens in this movie happens in the last 10 minutes. The rest of it is excruciatingly, mind-numbingly boring. I'm not going into the Meg 2 looking for Oscar-worthy writing, but my god, the script is so bad in this. The dialogue is awful, the characters are all cardboard cutouts of people, and the villain is so cartoony. I don't mind movies that are just supposed to be mindless fun. I don't need every movie to be some deep philosophical look at life. I like going to the movies every now and then to watch a movie that is nothing but mindless fun. But the Meg 2 forgot the fun, because all this movie is mindless. At number 2, I have probably one of the biggest disappointments of the year. 65. I had somewhat mild expectations for this movie. When I saw it came from the same people that did A Quiet Place, I was actually looking forward to it, but boy was I let down hard. This is the longest 90-minute movie of the year. Yes, this movie is only an hour and a half. And it felt like 3 hours. Adam Driver is doing his utter best to carry this entire movie on his back, but there's only so much you can do with one of the worst scripts of the year. They put such an emphasis on the dinosaurs and the action when this movie was being marketed, but there are hardly any dinosaurs or action for that matter. It's just a monotonous journey with two unbelievably bland characters walking from point A to point B. And I'll never forget, someone actually reviewed this movie, and this is their exact review. I just watched 65, and it was awesome. It has Adam Driver and dinosaurs, and if you like Adam Driver and dinosaurs, then you're gonna like this movie. Well, here's a surprise for you. I like Adam Driver a lot, and I also really do like dinosaurs as well. But I didn't like this movie. It's horrible. And here we are at number 1 to finish it all off. And if you watch my channel this year, then my number 1 pick should be no surprise to you. The worst movie of 2023 goes to Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Now, don't get me wrong, when I first heard about this movie last year, I knew that it was going to be bad, but at the very least, I was just hoping that it would be dumb, stupid fun. But evidently, that was too much to ask for, because Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is just a bad film all around, no matter how you slice it. This movie is just terrible from a filmmaking standpoint. There are truly no redeeming qualities about this thing. It's not scary, the acting is absolutely horrendous, the cinematography is ugly, and the costumes look like some cheap-ass costume that you would get from Party City. And like a lot of the previous entries on this list, this movie is just a snooze fest. With an idea like this, you would expect this movie to be at least somewhat entertaining, but it was not. And the only reason this was made is because the character of Winnie the Pooh was made public domain. It is no longer a copyrighted character. And this is just further evidence that characters like that should never be made public domain, because otherwise we're just going to get cheap, knockoff, Goodwill, Walmart bargain bin shit like this. And this movie holds a very special title. It's only the second 0 out of 10 rating that I've given since I started reviewing movies. So big congrats to you, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. That is why you are the worst movie of 2023. Well, that's it, everybody. That was my list of the worst movies of 2023. If you guys agree or disagree with my picks, then comment down below. I would love to know what you thought were the worst movies of the year. If you guys like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe. If you want to see my worst movies of the year list from 2021 as well as 2022, I'll link those right over here. Other than that, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your day, and I will see you all next time when we go over the best movies of 2023.